Hi and welcome to Archives of Warcraft. This is the series where we look at features of dungeons from vanilla times that are still sort of present now, but because aspects of them have been removed and quests have been removed, their presence can be a little bit of a mystery, so here's where we shed a little bit of light onto that. Now this week we're going to look at Maraudon, but also combined with Desolace, the zone with which it's in, because they are tied very strongly together. Maraudon did not come out with World of Warcraft initially. Came out a bit later, but it is all very much tied in with quests around Desolace and with the Centaur tribes around Desolace, so we're going to combine them together. So when you come towards Maraudon itself, one of the first things you notice, and you sort of know this must be a reason for this, is the spirits of Centaurs walking around, the spirits of the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 5th Khan. They all have names. Don't do anything now, of course. But more about those later. To explain those, we really need to go back to their parents. Now, they are very much in Maraudon. And the story of this you can sort of eke out if you go to Calibras, who's corrupted in a boss form, and you kill him and his spirit appears, Calibras the Redeemed. And he tells you a little bit of a story. Now, effectively, he is the grandson of Cenarius. Cenarius had a few children, 2 sons. Zetar, whose spirit appears right at the end of the instance, and Remulos. Remulos had a son who was Calibras, but he was younger than Zetar. Zetar was described as being slight, not quite so physical, but quite intelligent and cunning. But Remulos was always thought of the good-looking one, I suppose, the glorious one. And Zetar was a little bit jealous. And yes, this is another example of brotherly jealousy along the same lines as Malfurion and Illidan, but perhaps for a different reason. So Zetar got a little bit jealous, and he was seduced by Princess Theladras, who is the end boss in Maraudon. And they had some children, the Centaurs, who are cursed by Cenarius. And of these Centaur children, the 5 sons are the 5 spirits of the Khans. These split up and founded their own Centaur tribe. So these were like the founders of the now 5 Centaur tribes that you see around Maraudon. 2 of them, the Magram Centaurs and the Gelkis Centaur, you could have actually got rep with. There was a rep grind associated with them. There wasn't really anything in it, but you could get reps with those 2 from the 2nd and 3rd Khans respectively at the time. But those reps are no longer in the game either. And those original Khans, those original Centaur sons, then killed Zetar. So he dead. And what has happened at the point at which you're going into Maraudon is Calibras has decided to go in to try and redeem the spirit of his uncle. But the corruption of the place has sent him and his Dryad sisters, who you see as mobs around the place, poisoned, their minds poisoned. Viletongue very much involved in this, but more about him in a bit. And so he's failed in his mission. So when you kill him, he's quite pleased that his spirit is now free, but he's still quite sad that he's failed and his sisters are still mad. But then you go on and you kill Princess Theladras, and you can see that the spirit of Zetar appears back as a keeper of the grove type thing again. And in fact, I gather now, although this is not in game, that his spirit is no longer supposed to be, in contemporary terms, tied to Maraudon. It's supposed to now be free in the Emerald Dream. Doesn't really seem to say a great deal of thanks about that. Now, there are a few other NPCs about. Kavindra you might find outside of the instance of Maraudon, but sort of within its caverns by a pool. And she is the sister of Calibras. And he's already gone in, and she sends you in after him. She also sends you in to recover the scepter of Calibras. Now, Now this is just a staff, so you wonder why I've got it on my paladin. Well, no, just keep it. But it wasn't. It was actually useful at the time. It allowed you to bypass a certain amount of the instance. The instance now, if you've gone through with looking for dungeon, you notice is in 3 parts, as it sort of was then. But now you just get automatically ported into the start of the 3 parts. There's the orange side of it with all the orangey crystals, and that has that's what I used to call the elemental side. There's the purple side of it, which has a lot of the satyrs in it, and then there's the area at the end with Princess Theladras. Now, the reason for this is it's a classic big instance. People wouldn't generally do it all in one go. There was no point anyway, because if the gear from the initial bosses was useful to you, it's very likely that the end boss was quite hard for you. There was such a large spread in levels. But the Sceptre of Celebras allowed you to teleport to the last parts to do the last few bosses. Now, you can still do that now, even without signing up for Dungeon Finder. It's just that where you had to take this scepter to open up a portal, the portal is just there now. If you wander around the caverns as you go through the stone doors into Maraudon itself, but not into the instance, you come across the first Khan, the spirit of the first Khan. Behind him is like an altar, and you can now see the portal. You can just go into the portal and you'll teleport to the end. Just past Celebras, you can actually just go back and do Celebras boss, and then go forward and do the last 3 bosses. But what you used to have to do is use that scepter to be able to open up that portal. So again, it's one of those things. If you had this thing, you were quite useful because you could bypass those for other people. It's a bit like having a key. And it wasn't that difficult to get. All you had to do was to take the quest, and you had to kill 2 bosses. You had to kill Noxian, the Water Elemental boss. The Water Elemental was farmed quite a bit, actually, as Anchorage came out, because it drops a trinket, still does now, which gives you nature resistance, and it wasn't unique equipped. You could have 2 of them. And the nature resistance was useful on a couple of bosses, but particularly Princess Huhuran in Anchorage. Also a good reason for farming the Dragons of Nightmare. You can still see their portals around now in the 4 zones, although no Dragons of Nightmare anymore. But more about those when I get onto Anchorage much later on. So you kill Noxian and you get 1 part of the staff, and you kill Viletongue, who's the satyr and the purple side, and you get the other part. And then you go and kill Celebras, the corrupted. His spirit seems quite happy that you've done that. And then you can turn it in and you get the Sceptre of Celebras. Now, I've got it here. It's just a staff now. It's a blue quality staff. It wasn't blue quality then. And now it is just that. And you think, well, why am I keeping it? It's useless to me. I can't even equip it as a paladin. Well, no, I can't. I'm just a hoarder. I just keep old crap. But then it's useful for when I'm doing things like this. Now, when it comes to the purpose of these spirits of the Khans, for which you've got the first Khan near the portal, where you can use to get to the last part. There's 1 Khan who wanders around outside the instance, but in the orange area. There's another one who wanders outside the instance, but in the purple area. And again, there's 1 each in the purple and orange area, but inside the instance. And the quest, you were given a quest by a centaur who's very hush-hush, and gave you basically, didn't say anything to you, but gave you a parchment that says, do this. And what it involved was, first of all, you had to find an elite outside the instance entrance called the Nameless Prophet. Still there now. Can spawn in various places. Doesn't do anything now, though. It's just an elite. But it dropped an amulet. And what you could do then is you could use this amulet on what appears to be the friendly ghosts of these Khans. And it would turn them hostile and you would kill them and get some gems. And you did that off all 5. And then you combined these gems together and turned it in and then got your reward. And that was all it was. It was just a little quest there. And one final NPC that might be curious for people, again, wandering around the caverns outside the instance, is a caged centaur called Kera. And this is related to sort of the war between the different factions of the centaurs, in particular between the Gelkis and the Magrum. Now, the story goes that the Magrum centaur believe in strength, and that is the noblest pursuit, and they're considered pretty primitive, even by centaur standards, not particularly civilized, because they're just bloodthirsty fighters. Whereas the Gelkis are a bit more refined. They believed that Theladras, their mother, would protect all the centaur tribes, and they didn't have to pursue strength to that extreme. And they got into a bit of a scrap, and they've been fighting for thousands of years, I think. And this particular NPC is involved in a quest to try and sort of smooth over these grudges and bring the Centaur clans back together. Okay, and that's all there's to it. Looks hostile to you because you had to have a certain rep with one of the Centaur factions. I believe it was the Magrum ones, above a certain level before it would talk to you. It was hostile even at the time, unless you had rep above a certain level. And it was a hell of a rep grind. But, I mean, this is the thing. I mean, I mentioned that I do this with Desolace. And Desolace, I'm in two minds, really, with Desolace as to whether I liked it or not. I struggled to remember, because I remember, on the one hand, complaining that it looked so bleak. I thought, this is a depressing place, bloody hell. And you can understand, not as a slight on the arts team, it looked as it was supposed to look. But at the same time, I remember doing all the quests there. I must have been there for some time. And I remember doing the rep grind. I'm not sure how far you could get on that rep. Certainly not Exalted. Blimey, I certainly didn't get there. But I did get enough rep to be able to do these quests. And so I must have enjoyed the quest in there. And because I spent a long time there. And for like a human alliance, it was a long way off the beaten track. Long way off. So yeah, I must have quite liked it. I mean, it's not all about centaurs in this place. As you've also got warlocks and legiony demon stuff in one part of Desolace, and you've got Naga in another. If you go past the Naga and into the sea, you come across things called waterlogged footlockers. Now, these had a use at the time. This is back from the days before certain quality of life features were introduced, and rogues, in order to be able to lockpick, had to skill it up, a bit like a profession. And this involved basically picking locks on these footlockers that you would find in various zones. And when it came to doing it in Desolace, I think this is where some rogues would have got a bit annoyed from it, because you're swimming between them. Obviously, then took a long time to be able to do that. But this is why, you could be at top level and you could ask. I think some rogues were quite pleased about it in a way, because it meant you could say to, some people would go to rogues, can you open some lockboxes, please? Some lockboxes usually meant about 10. And some of them would think, oh, Christ. And a very common response was, sorry, I don't have the skill. Can't get away with that now. You just have to be rude. And sometimes it would be true, of course, because it was a hassle. You had to go around. You'd have to find where these things were. I mean, there weren't... Some of them you came across quite naturally. There were some in wetlands around the Murloc areas, for example. You would just come across them. And some of them, I mean, you were never going to come across these. They're off the coast, underwater. To be able to skill them up. But I am pretty sure as well there were some rogues who just did have the skill and thought, I'm not opening your lockboxes. So that's what those were for. So there's the story of Maraudon and the family feuding that's been going on for 10,000 years. A little bit of Desolace thrown in as well. And if you've enjoyed it, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and share it with people you think might also enjoy it. If you want to see others in the series, then on the next slide click on my list of playlists and look up Archives of Warcraft. And until next time, I'll see you later.